Yeah, hi. It's Danny Woodburn Schmooze Zoom, and I want to see everybody. I don't want to feel like I'm talking to myself because I want to exchange, have a social exchange. So, can we make everybody visible?
How's your day going, Danny?
It's going good, Michael. How has I saw the tail end of that panel. It was pretty awesome. Um, it made me think of all the questions I used to get. One of my favorite things is I do a routine about kids spotting me. It came out of a experience at the grocery store. Uh, this little boy turned to his mom and said, "Look at that little dad." He was very sort of excited, to see me. This I think constituted being a dad. Having a full beard. So it tickled me. But on the other end of it, there are sometimes the kids, they say things that are embarrassing or maybe even their parents might consider them hurtful. And, uh, the go-to that, growing up, when I grew up, the go-to for parents was like, raise the back of the hand, like get ready to swat the kid. And I'm like, no, 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 don't do that. But the joke goes on to say, let me hit him. That that was the premise of the bit. Um, uh, All right, I'm seeing a couple of people. I can see the roof of somebody's place, which is good. I see Stephen
Hey,
David
Danny.
Simon has joined
Steve
us.
Simon here. Can you hear me? Just sound check.
Yeah, yeah.
So I want to do a quick. This is Steve Simon here from the Department on Disability for the City of LA and with the ReelAbilities Film Festival LA. I just want to. Here's a simple ground rules for this room. It's in between movies, pretending we're in a movie theater, and we're taking a break for a little bit. We're grabbing some popcorn. We're making a pit stop. And
Right,
wow,
we're in the
we
lobby.
turned
We're in
into
the
a
lobby.
TV star.
We're
We
rapping
just
about
turned
what we
into a
just
TV star.
saw. Yeah, absolutely.
In the hallway, and now you get this to ask him anything you want in this small group space. So, chat. Danny has this extraordinary history in the industry and an extraordinary work he's done. Also trying to expand visibility for folks. And this is that chat time. So you got about 25
Yeah, this is not a speech, people.
Go.
This is not a speech. This is a conversation. So
There you go.
I ain't going to talk till you start asking questions. Here I am. Like, you can't all be getting popcorn right now.
Hey, we always work with you. I never get a chance to ask you simple questions like this. So
Yeah.
well, let's put you on the spot. Talk about favorite roles that you've had that you thought were best written for you and your skills.
I've been lucky enough in my 30 years now as a card-carrying union member to have such a diverse array of roles, from father of the bride at a wedding to uh, a cuckolded husband who's covering up his wife's murderous habits, um, truck driver, State Department head. I've had so many different, like, for me, just outside the box kinds of opportunities. And I'm so grateful for that, to have that kind of career behind me at this point and ahead of me, I'm sure, because I'm not going anywhere. Um, but some of those roles were like I had to sort of battle through, um, talking to producers and directors and writers and say, uh, yeah, it's just not a pathos around dwarfism. It's just not something like they would always write these sort of sad sack stories about my being upset about my size. And I'm like, that's never really been, as far as I know, from any little people that I've ever met, like it's never been an issue about size. And it's always sort of the way people in society can make us feel, like with any disability, the way people in society can make us feel about our differences, toward the negative. And so they sort of capitalize on you being negative instead of the world being negative. And I feel like that's probably a disability trope a lot, where the blame for the pathos gets put on the disability and not on society's treatment of the disability. But one example, I did this show. I got offered to do this show called Silk Stockings, which was like this late night cable, campy, like the whole opening was like a woman walking in fishnet stockings, like really, really like, you know, as sexualized as you could be on like a local cable channel. But it was a detective show, and I played, as I mentioned earlier, a cuckolded husband who was covering up. He was a mess. He wrote, he ghost wrote all of her novels that made her famous, and he was covering up her murderous ways because she was killing off the men that she was with, and I was married to her, but pretending to be her butler. So it's a really like one of these like, I don't know, it should have been written in the 70s kind of like soap opera style drama shows. And they had all this stuff about me being sort of sad about my size. And I was like, I don't want to do it like this. So I wrote, I sent a message back to the producers and I said, do we have to make it about all this? And it just doesn't ring true to me. It's more true to me that his wife is constantly cheating on him, that he's been left by the wayside, that he's his cuckolded husband. You know, that was more truthful to me and nothing about my height. And so they took everything out of the script that had anything to do with my size. And then I read the script again and I was like, this could be played by anybody. And that's what I felt like. That was a huge victory. Cheesy little show, but I felt like it was a huge victory. This is just a great way to sum up this show. So we had an actress who was playing my wife, and lovely woman, and there's a scene where she's teasing me. She's about to go, go get it on with one of her dates, and she, in the scene she takes off her bra, and they're like, the director says, you don't have to reveal anything. We'll shoot it this way. You don't have to see anything. She's like, no, I don't care. So she was going to take off her bra in the scene, and they go clear the set. So, because she's going to be naked for a second. So they can clear the set. And I think 2 wardrobe guys left, and that was it. It's like only essential personnel. And I'm like, why is the guy here from catering with a cheese plate? I don't know why he's staying in the room. So that, to me, that sort of summed up the type of show that this was. But as campy as it was still, I felt a really strong victory for me as a performer. There was another show that I was on, and I get opportunities to do like a lot of prosthetic makeup kind of things. This year I was a pig, a magically transformed pig on a show called Legacies, which was hours and hours of makeup in and out. And I had done a series years ago called Special Unit 2, where it was about a Chicago police force that hunts down mythological creatures. And I played an in-custody gnome who was an informant. And before I got the job, I was asked, I sort of set parameters around what I would and wouldn't do, because I just didn't want to create some stereotype around the size of my character so much as more around the mythos of the character. And so they had a scene where my character was sitting in a child seat in the squad car. So whenever they transformed him around, he's in a child seat. And I was like, look, I'll do all this other stuff. It's fine with me. But this thing with the child seat bit, it plays on a weird thing around my size. And I didn't like how it felt. So I was like, I don't want to infantilize this character in that way, because it's such a trope for little people to be infantilized a lot. So I was like, that's got to go, or I don't want to do it. So, you sort of have to negotiate some of these things before you actually agree to do the job. And so they said, sure, no problem. They took it out. So I go in for my first makeup test. And this is where you really have to advocate for yourself. And I'm sitting in a makeup chair. This is hours of getting into makeup, because it's a makeup test, right? So they're trying different appliance positions and trying to figure out how to do it. And prop guy comes in with a couple of child seats, and he holds them up and he goes, which one is going to be right for you? And I go, no, that scene's been cut. We're not doing it that way. And he goes, oh, okay. Well, the producers just told me to get it. So I said, yeah, no, we're not using it. So obviously he has to go and answer to somebody. And he goes out, and a few minutes later, one of the producers comes back in, the guy who brought me on, who knows my story about this particular scene. And he says, look, he said, the network really wants to see you do the scene in the child seat. They think it's funny. And I was like, yeah, I'm not going to do it. So he goes away for about 10 minutes, and then he comes back. And I'm still getting the makeup on. And he goes, well, they're really, really adamant about it. And I'm just in the testing phase now. I'm not like fully contracted, you know. We're sort of going to do the pilot, you know. So I'm sort of contracted to the pilot, but obviously I have to abide by what the producers and the directors want. But this was an agreement that we settled before. So he said, yeah, they really want to see you in the seat. And I said, well, I'm not going to do it. And he said, well, they said, if you're not going to do it, then they're going to send you home. And I just said, send me home. So that's the moment where you sort of make a life decision where you feel like, do I want to debase myself to this point in this moment for this job, which pays more money than I'd ever seen before, or do I stick to my guns and you know, own my own power in that moment and not give in to something I know I would have regretted later. So the producer left, came back, and he says, yeah, they cut the child seat bit. And I'm like, oh, did they? Because obviously they didn't want to go and look for another actor to play my role. And they had asked me to do it to begin with. So I felt like I was in a good place to deny them their opportunity for that kind of exploitation. But that's not to say that these things haven't come up. I know I've probably told this story a number of times on a few different panels. Jingle All the Way. I think Michael's smiling because he knows the story. So Jingle All the Way, I had a blast. I met Arnold Schwarzenegger for the first time. It was my first major studio film. You know, it was $80 million, which by today's standards is pretty small, but in 1996, that's a fortune, an $80 million film. We're doing a scene in a warehouse where all the Santas and the Santa's helpers, like they're mob guys essentially selling black market toys, and they're all in the quote unquote mob guy workshop, and a fight breaks out, and the director comes up to me and goes, in this moment, I want you to run up and bite Arnold on the ass. And I'm like, what? What? So I'm like, yeah, I don't want to do that is what my first feeling is, because it's like, it's another one of those tropes of for little people, men especially, where they give them sort of animalistic qualities, you know, patting on the head, or, you know, that's happened to me a number of times. Just, you know, people have a tendency to want to pat my head. It's like black people hair, I guess, in the same regard. They want to pat my head, just like they enjoy stroking the hair of black people, which is a totally other story that I don't think I will tell right now. But so anyway, I turned to Jim Belushi, who was behind me, and I go, Jim, and I feel really weird about this bit. And I go, what would you do in this instance? And Jim goes, yeah, I'd bite him on the ass. And I'm like, okay. So I turn to Arnold and I go, Arnold, this feels really strange. I really don't want to do this. He goes, no, come on, Danny. You could bite me on the ass. It's fine. Do it. It's fine. I don't care. You can bite me on the ass. Do whatever you want. So I went with my gut, which was not to do it. And I said, yeah, I don't want to do it. And so now the pressure's on. They go, well, you got to give us an alternative that's funny. So I said, oh, okay. So now it's on me to come up with something that they will like. Because I've just asked them to cut something that I don't like. And so now if you watch the film, which is, it has become, it wasn't the huge success that we all thought it might be back then, but it has become like now a go-to Christmas movie. My character pulls out a taser, flips it on a few times, and then crams it into the Schwarzenegger keister. It lights him up, essentially. So for me, that was a much better alternative. And it plays well. People enjoy it. And I'm grateful again that I didn't give in that moment. Fast forward, you know, about 12 years to another show. And I'm once again asked to bite a character on the ass. And it was in the script before I went out. I was going to fly to New York to do the show. It was in the script. And so I called my manager and I said, look, call them back, tell them that it needs to be in my contract that Danny will not be biting anyone on the ass. So there's actually a contract that I've signed that says Danny will not be biting anybody. That's Hollywood.
Go ahead, Michael.
Well, you're nothing but full of integrity. But I'm curious.
Well,
well, except for that one time in Florida. But
it's Florida, so it's a given.
I think there's a lot of pressure on young people, particularly in this industry, particularly now, because everything's based on image, to perform a certain way. So did you put your foot down from the jump and say you wouldn't do things? Or did you get to a certain point where you were powerful enough to say,
Well, I think I grew up. I grew up with a strong support system. I had 2 older brothers who were bigger than me, and we always wrestled and fought with each other as equals on equal footing. There was never any quarter given. Usually a knife was pulled, something. Boys will try to kill each other essentially. So I had a lot of good close friends, but I was also bullied. I was bullied in the neighborhood. I was bullied by kids at school, and so I had to learn to stand up for myself as well. And I used my humor and my that secondary wits, I guess you could call them, to try to get out of compromising situations. So even as an extra, there was a beat. This is one of these scenes where my original agent was this woman named Coralie Jr. And Coralie Jr., she was like an original Little Rascal, who was actually Cuba Gooding Jr.'s agent back in the early 90s. And Cuba, in his Academy Awards speech, thanks Coralie, actually, as his first agent. So Coralie is like, she's like one of the last of a dying breed. She had an annual photo that she put out with all of her little people. She had a lot of little people on staff, and she had circus performers, and she kind of required you to be a circus performer. Like these 2 guys I knew didn't have any like circus talent, but she says to them, go learn to spin some plates, So they would do it. And so she would have the weirdest Christmas parties with like old vaudeville style performers and circus performers, fire breathers, sword swallowers, bearded lady, like everything that you would think if it's in a circus would be in her stable of talent. So she put a picture in the Variety every year that said, the one to call when you need someone small. And then she would have all of her little people lined up in a row. It was the creepiest thing. And I'm happy to say I was never in that photo shoot, from smallest to tallest. And so it was sort of like, I knew this was not going to be my forever agent, but I was the only person I could get at the time, early on, 1990, I guess it was, to represent me. So I had a job as an extra. One day we were working on this Tom Arnold show. It was a special he did called Naked Truth, I think, back in the early 90s. And they hired 5 little people to dress in Little League uniforms. And they were supposed to be ringers for a Little League game, that Tom was bringing little people to a Little League game to be ringers in the game. And so, I get there. I don't really know what the show's about. I don't know what's happening. This is one of the most surreal moments. So I'm in the car with Tom Arnold. I'm in the front seat. There's 4 other little people in the back seat. We're all in Little League uniforms. Tom Arnold pulled into this parking lot for a big baseball diamond over in a park in, I don't know, Sherman Oaks somewhere. And Frank Zappa walks up to the window. And Frank comes up to the window to address Tom. That's where it gets weird. Like, is that Frank Zappa? So Frank Zappa walks up and he looks in the car and he sees all of us. And I don't know what his lines are, but he goes, midgets, Tom? Like really? That's what you brought to the game? And when he said that in the rehearsal, I could feel all the little people in the back seat just clench up, you know. Everybody's like, what did he say? So that was rehearsal. So as extras, you just sort of sit in your place. The lead actors walk away. They go to makeup touch-ups. They go back to their trailer while they set up the lights. Extras stay put. So the five of us are in there going, what do we do? What do we do? How do we address this situation? You know, because, you know, everybody's getting like, I don't know, 150, 180 bucks. They don't want to be fired. You know, we all want to pay our rent, that kind of thing. So how do we address this? And nobody wanted to say anything. So they elected me to say something because I was in the front seat. So when Tom got back in the car, I said, look, Tom, that word, midget, is like, for us, it's the M word. It's really derogatory kind of thing to say to little people. And I was like, we need to kind of fix that. Well, he's like, well, what's the term? And I said, well, it's little people. So the best we got out of that was the lines stay the same up to that point, but then Tom corrects Frank. He says, no, little people. So he corrects him in that moment. So I had this like teaching moment in this like really stupid little scene with the five of us as extras. So these are like I think turning point moments in my mind as a person who's now in this industry, and I wanna keep advocating for myself. And there's certain things I've already said to myself I don't want to do. You know, I don't want to be an object. I don't want to be an object of ridicule or a physical object. I know there was another show where a person was asked to wear a serving tray on their head at a party and just walk around with hors d'oeuvres on their head. So it was like a little person that was hired to do that. And they're like, hey, do you want to do this? And I'm like, no, I don't want to do that. So there's a lot of those kinds of jobs would come up.
So Danny, I hate to do this. We have to jump in because we're going to be out of time.
Oh, yeah.
Chatting with you. So
well, I guess I can be pretty verbose in a room, even if nobody's asking me questions.
Just a bit.
Thank you so much for sharing this. Our next film is literally going to start in a minute, which is Bedlam, which is an extraordinary film. I hope everyone joins us. And thank you again, Danny Woodburn, for spending time in ReelAbilities LA's first Schmooze Zoom. Thank you.
All right. I'm sorry I didn't get to meet all of you. See you next time.
Thanks, man.
All right, thank you.